Hi friends, my name's Tristan. On this channel I like to do art things and photography things, but today I actually want to talk about book things. These are some of the books I read last year, and I'm going to go through all the books I read last year and let you know which ones I really liked. Some of the books I read I donated, or they were on Kindle or audiobooks, so I don't have the physical copy anymore. Also, some of the books, my little sidekick decided that she wanted to snack on them, so some of them are no longer with us. The first one I read for the year was Beloved Savage. It was one that I don't have anymore. I donated it. I'll put a picture up. But it was one of those Fabio type books where it has like a shirtless man and a woman on the front. I got it from the library in one of their boxes of like, please take this book because we don't want to throw it away, but we don't want it anymore. I gave it 2 stars. It wasn't for me. The second book I finished, I've actually got 3 copies of it. I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It is a fantastic book. I read this with my fiance. It's kind of funny because we both watched the movie, and then after we watched the movie, we're like, we want to read the book. And then for Christmas, we both bought each other the book without knowing. Really good. I gave it 5 stars and would highly recommend. I think the movie's great too. Next book I read was one that TikTok told me to read. I buddy read it with 2 of my friends, and they both loved it. I, not so much. Song of Achilles. It was hyped way too much up for me. Like TikTok, everyone's loving it. BuzzFeed said that it was the #1 book that would make you cry. And I think that's where it disappointed me because I didn't cry. It got 3 stars for me. I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it like everyone else. The next book I read was Unlikely by Jeffrey Brown. I give this 5 stars. It is a graphic novel. It is a book that a lot of people could relate to because it's about like a kind of a rocky relationship and how to like just survive if a relationship doesn't survive. The next book I read was Stargirl. It was another book that didn't really super butter my biscuits. I feel like if I would have read it in middle school, I would have liked it a lot more. I gave it 2 stars. Strawberry Girl, 3 stars. It's a good book. It's written by an author who traveled around and then told stories of the people she met to kind of show you what life is like around there. So it's really cool to see how life was in Florida around that time, which is where my grandmother grew up. The next book I read was The Dutch House by Patchett, and it is one that I read with a book club of mine. I gave it like 2.5 stars. On Goodreads, I gave it 2 stars. The next book after The Dutch House, The Bookshop of Yesterdays by Amy Meyerson. And this was actually such a fun read. I gave it 4 stars. It's about this woman who her uncle left her clues, kind of like a scavenger hunt based on books because he owned a bookstore, and it's really fun as a reader to like go through this scavenger hunt with her. Oof. The next book I read was maybe the worst book I read in 2021, and I feel bad, but I have to be honest, right? Awful, terrible, the worst. There's nothing wrong with liking something that other people don't like, or vice versa. The Girl from the Well, Rin Chapico. Hi, Cookie. The story had some potential, I think, but it was written very much like a first book. I only gave it 1 star, and I was not a fan. Alright, the next book I read, so good. Crying in H by Michelle Zauner. I mean, if you've been anywhere on the internet that someone talks about books, you've probably heard of this book because it is so phenomenal. Basically talks about her life as a half Korean, half American person, and there were tears, there was laughter, there was all of the in-between. 10 out of 10. I mean, 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Carol I listened to the audiobook, so I don't know if that changed my perception of it or anything, but I was not a fan. It got 3 stars. I wish it did more for me. If you have any recommendations for a better LGBTQ story, please let me know. The next book I had was Sleep My Child Forever. I gave it 2 stars. It is a true crime story of a woman who murdered her own children. I love me some true crime, but the way it was written and told, the story was... it kind of flopped. It's just like the way it was written could have been done better, so I only gave it 2 stars. Next up is The Mothers by Britt Bennett. This was another one I read with my book club, and I gave it 4 stars. It's not like storyline where it's like something crazy is happening. It's kind of like you just follow these people and their drama and how life goes. But yeah, it was pretty good. 4 stars. The next one I read was My Haunting Love, which is another one I donated. It is by someone in my hometown, and I gave it 3 stars. I really liked it. It's another one that I think I would have liked a lot more if I had read it when I was younger, but it was written well, and it was an interesting concept. It's about a girl who moves into a house where she kind of meets a ghost boy about her age, and they kind of bond and then have to work past some evil in the house as well. But it was a fun story. Another one I read this year, God, Creation, and the Tools for Life by Sylvia Brown. Sorry if you see me, I'm looking over here at my Goodreads list. Don't mind me. But I gave it 2 stars. There was a lot in it that I liked and agreed with, but there was too much in it that I thought was contradicting itself. But if it's something you want to read, make sure you're reading it with like an open mind, but also a skeptical mind. So like, allow yourself to take the information in, but don't let it skew your perception of reality or anything. The next one I forgot to put in my pile. It's in my bedroom. It is In the Woods by Tana French. I read it with one of my book clubs, and I gave it 4 stars. It's another one that was really good, but I also had it figured out within the first like 20% of the book, which I feel like that always happens to me. I always have detective things figured out way too early. So if you know a book that's gonna blow my mind, please let me know in the comments. So there are sequels, and I think it's a whole series. I'm not sure how many books, but I don't think I will be continuing, even though I gave the first one 4 stars. The next book I read was The Husbands by Chandler Baker. I gave it 3 stars because I had it figured out by like the first chapter. It didn't really do much for me, but it was fun to read. I did give it to my mother for Christmas though, and she finished it in 2 days. I think she liked it a lot. Ooh, the next book I read, The Baby Proof by Emily Giffin. So a lot of people on Goodreads said that this was like not a good book, but I actually loved it, and this kind of got me into more of a romance phase. Like, I'm more interested in reading romance after reading this book because I'd been primarily thriller horror books, but now I also really like romance. I gave 3 stars, but thinking about it now, I would give it 4 stars. So the next one is another one that is in my bedroom on my nightstand that I forgot to grab. It is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King, and I read it in 2 days. It was an easy read. I did give it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I think I would put it at 3 now. I think it was just the hype of finishing it so fast that I felt like I liked it more than I did. Oh my goodness, this next book, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. Honestly, I bought it just for the cover because it's so beautiful. The painting is by Kim Jacobson. It's a novella, so I think it is 112 pages, and I felt like throwing up when I finished it. It was so disgusting, but like in the way it was meant to be, because it's a horror. So I gave it 4.5 stars, 4 stars on Goodreads. But if you like horror and things that are gory and like just kind of really messed up, you could give this a try. The next book after that one was Dear Girls by Ali Wong. It was a great book. I had the audio book, so it was nice to hear her reading it. Felt like your mom was talking to you because, like, technically I think she wrote this book to her children. I gave it 3 stars. After that, we went with Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. I still don't know how to say his name. I should probably look it up. It was another shorter read, kind of trippy. I gave this 3 stars. Let me tell you about this next book. I saw it on Noelle Gallagher's channel, I think. I don't think she ever said she read it, but it was on her TBR. The Pisces by Melissa Broder. I looked up like a list that was like the spiciest books. This book was so weird. I don't even know what to say. The book was not good. I gave it 1 star. It was so ridiculous. The like spicy scenes were embarrassing to read. Like, things were described as if they were a 12-year-old being like, ooh, he has balls. I'm like, the like narrator of the book is judgmental. She's so rude. She's going to therapy for like love addiction, which isn't the weird part, but the weird part is that while she's there, she's like super putting down every other woman there, saying like she's gross or like she has horse teeth or like it was just so annoying to be like in that mindset of that character that I was so ready for it to be over. So the next book I read was Carrie by Stephen King. I gave it 2 stars, and there was also some racist things in there, and every time the gym teacher came in, he talked about her breasts, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. If a woman had written this, it would be so different. But it was an interesting story. Coraline was the next book I read. I had it as an audiobook, and it was a cute little story. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it, but it didn't change my life or anything. I think maybe if I read it not as an audiobook, it might feel a little different. Next book is All the Bright Places, which I wasn't expecting to like because it was a high school romance, and at this point in my life, I just wasn't into it, but I did like how much they talked about mental health in that book because I also struggle with mental health. I gave it 4 stars. It did make me cry at the end, and then I watched the movie after, and I hated the movie. So, upside down. So we've got The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. Allison Pages recommended it, and oh my goodness, I loved this book. I loved it so much. I would recommend this to anyone, especially if you like The Perks of Being a Wallflower, or if you liked the show Atypical. Would recommend. It feels like you're reading someone's journal, kind of glimpsing into the mind of someone else. 5 stars. After that was an audiobook I listened to, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. It's another one that if you have been anywhere on BookTube or Book Talk, I'm assuming you've heard of Colleen Hoover. She's blowing up everywhere. So I got Ugly Love as an audiobook, and I liked it quite a bit. I gave it 3 stars. Could be better, could be worse. I think the audiobook aspect took me out of it, especially because the male character spoke so slowly. I had to speed it up to like 2 times speed, and it still felt weird. This is another one. I don't feel comfortable rating it. I don't know. I almost feel like I shouldn't even say anything. A Child Called It by Dave Peltzer. First off, I am very much on the side of believing victims, 100%. But reading this felt like fiction to me, and you know what, that's all I'm gonna say. I didn't rate it, I didn't like it, but it is what it is. I don't know how I accidentally skipped over this one. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. She's another author that's popping off online. I haven't read any of her other things yet. I don't know if maybe I would like her other stuff better, but I actually did not like this book very much. I don't know, it's something about things getting way too hyped up and then just not living up to the hype. I don't care about these random people. I just wanted more of the main characters, and my favorite character in this book was Kit, who I feel got the least amount of, like, playtime in the book. But I think I gave it 2 stars. The next book I read, I got on my Kindle. It was Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. 5 stars. I'm so looking forward to the second one, The Retreat, that comes out in July, I think. But it was another detective mystery one, and they're stuck in this hotel that used to be a sanatorium for, like, tuberculosis patients, and there's some weird stuff going on, and then people start dying, and it was a good story from start to finish. I really enjoyed reading it. Would recommend. 5 stars. After that, on my Kindle, I got The Vegetarian by Han King. I just feel like it went over my head. Like, maybe I am not smart enough to get it. It was interesting. I liked the second part most out of all 3 parts. It's about this woman who's a vegetarian, and basically her story is told from 3 other people's perspectives in her life and not from her perspective. It didn't resonate with me as much as it should have, I guess. But 2 stars. It was nicely written. Oh my gosh. So this next book, it was also on my Kindle. If you couldn't tell, I got a Kindle at the end of the year last year. The Kiss Quotient by Helen Wong. It was so good. It's very spicy, so if you don't like sex scenes in your book, maybe skip this one. It's about this woman who is 30 years old, and she has autism, and she decides that she needs to learn how to be with a man, so she hires an escort, and, you know, the rest is history. But 5 stars for The Kiss Quotient. We have 2 more books. Find You in the Dark by Nathan Ripley. This was one that I found at the beginning of the year that was recommended by Ian Reid, the person who wrote I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And this was a pretty good book. But the ending wasn't it for me. That's all I'll say. I still think it was a really good book. I was intrigued the whole way through. This gets 3 stars from me. And finally, the last book on my list of 2021 is A Bound Woman is a Dangerous Thing by Damaris B. Hill. This is a book I got at the very beginning of the year. I think I started reading it in March, maybe, and it took me until the last day of 2021 to finish it. It's a poetry book about Black women in history. It's a great book. I just don't really get poetry. I don't understand it the greatest. But I do think I learned a lot in this, because before each poem, she gives a little background on who she's writing the poem about or for. I would recommend it if you like poetry and if you like history. Very intense. But that sums up all 35 books I read in 2021. Let me know if you read any of them. I hope that you reached your reading goal. If not, I hope you just read something, because it's always good to read. Let me know what your goal is for 2022. Mine is 45 books, so I'm gonna try to power through some books, and I think having a Kindle might help me a lot. And if you have any book recommendations, as always, I would love to see them in the bottom. Yeah? Really? Stay right there. Don't move. Don't move. thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Follow me on Goodreads. And I'll see you in the next one. Later, skater. Bye-bye.